Welcome to the second in a series of geospatial big data webinars presented by GCS of Missoula, Montana. Today's webinar topic is Moving to Mobility, Leveraging Location Analytics. My name is Kevin Corbally and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Let me set the stage for our mobility webinar by providing some context. We hear a lot about big data, but it's important to understand that geospatial organizations face big data challenges that are unique. With this webinar series, GCS is showing how custom solutions can be developed both efficiently and cost-effectively to address those challenges. Today, we'll be discussing how the location-enabled tablets and smartphones most of us already carry can be leveraged through mobile solutions to transform vital business processes within an organization. A common theme we'll see in mobile app demonstrations is using location analytics to deliver custom information to field personnel, customers, and target audiences. And let me take a minute to introduce our presenters today. Dr. Alex Philp is the president and founder of GCS, and he'll be one of our presenters. And we also have Brian Collins. He's a GCS systems integrator. And welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Great. All right. And before I give you details on today's session, let me tell you a little bit about GCS. The company presenting, it's the company presenting the Geospatial Big Data Webinar Series. GCS is a geospatial solutions company that delivers intelligent analytics through cloud networks and mobile platforms to provide answers to complex business problems. And the mobile applications we'll be discussing today were, or are being created as part of much larger, comprehensive big data solutions developed by GCS for specific clients. And let me go through a couple of housekeeping measures before we get into the webinar today. We have 60 minutes or 1 hour scheduled for the webinar. We plan to finish on time. And please also note that our audience members will be muted for the entire broadcast. But we do value your participation, so please don't hesitate to send our panel a question, and that'll happen at the end. We'll have about 15 minutes set aside for questions and answers, and you can type your question into the question box that you see on the right side of your screen. In addition, we're going to have 3 poll questions where we'll solicit your responses to issues that relate to mobile technology. And also, just to let you know, we are recording today, and you'll receive a link shortly after we're done letting you know where you can access the recording. And by the way, I should add that if you missed our first Geospatial Big Data webinar in June, Building, Deploying, and Managing Applications in the Cloud, you can find that recording on the GCS website at www.yourdatasmarter.com. And finally, we encourage you to register for our third webinar, which is scheduled for October 24th, and the topic will be Focus on Location Analytics. And a registration link will be included in the follow-up email that you'll be getting from us shortly after this webinar. And we're doing something different for this webinar. We're going to have a random drawing. One of you in our audience today will be winning a Google Nexus 7 tablet. And we'll be doing that drawing at random just before the Q&A session near the end of the webinar. And you do have to be online to win, so make sure you stick around for that. And let's take a quick look at the agenda. As I already mentioned, I'll be doing the welcome and introductions, Kevin Corbally, that's me, and then Alex Philp is going to come on to provide an overview of geospatial big data solutions and mobility. And then we'll get into our demos, the mobile application demos with Brian Collins, and we'll bring Alex back on for conclusions and summary and a wrap-up. And then, of course, we'll do that drawing for the Google Nexus 7. And then, if we stay on schedule, we'll have about 15 minutes for Alex and Brian to answer your questions. And let's take a look at what we expect you to take away from today's session. Most importantly, we want you to understand how location-enabled mobile technology can be leveraged to change core business processes of your organization. And specifically, you'll learn how to facilitate land transactions by delivering parcel information from multiple web-enabled databases. You'll learn how to increase sales by delineating geofences around retail sites for advertising and marketing purposes. And you'll also see how to expedite utility field work and other field applications using augmented reality to visualize data layers. And we're also going to tell you about the value propositions that each of these apps delivers and we'll talk about some of the other industries that can benefit from similar mobile applications. All right, so we're going to start off with a poll. Now this is where the audience gets involved, and you can see the poll is coming up on your screen now. And the first poll question is, in the next 6 months, do you have plans to create a mobile app? And you should just be able to click yes or no. There's only 2 choices for this. We ask you to select one. So do you expect in the next 6 months to create a mobile app? Pretty straightforward. And we have a pretty good idea how the voting is going to go on this one. Great. Let me give you just a few more seconds to vote here. We got about 87% of you. The rest of you go ahead and see if you can find that yes or no. Give that a click. All right, great. I'm going to close this off. Pretty much everybody's voted. And I'm going to share the results on screen. And as you see, the results there in the next 6 months, how many of you plan to create mobile apps? Pretty much 2/3 of you do. So that's about what we expected for a webinar like this. All right, let me put the poll away. And what I'd like to do now is bring on Alex Philp, Dr. Alex Philp, to start the formal presentation. Alex, let me hand the controls back over to you, and you're ready to go.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. It's wonderful to be here this afternoon with folks. Appreciate all the attendees joining. It's this series that we've created here at GCS on big data. When we originally envisioned this, we really wanted to focus on 3 main areas. Our first webinar was really about the cloud and what we see occurring in the cloud as regards to geospatial functions, businesses, processes. Today, of course, we're focusing on mobility. And finally, later in this fall, we're going to get into analytics, and then we're going to bring it all together into one package sometime in December. So we're really gratified by all the people that joined us in the first webinar, the feedback, the comment. This is our best attempt to share what we're doing with the rest of the world. So obviously, the overview of leveraging location analytics, the infographic you see there next to my wonderful face is an attempt to talk about how mobility is transforming businesses, our lifestyle, how we work, how we play, and almost every facet of industry that we touch here at GCS, and I'm sure many of you are also involved in who are listening today to today's webinar and participating in the webinar. Mobility is a fundamental sea change that we see occurring. Before we dive directly into mobility, however, we see mobility as being part of geospatial big data transformation. Now, again, many of you who are tracking big data are primarily familiar with what is described as the 3 V's, volume, velocity, variety, often being extended now into veracity. And of course, at GCS, we've been messing around with the idea of the 3 A's of big data, constant themes in our discussions with our clients around, I just want to have my data accessible. I need it to be, whatever solutions we build, we need them to be affordable. So people are really looking at total cost of ownership and doing more with less. And then finally, agility. So you take the 4 V's, combine them with the 3 A's, and we think that makes for a really interesting alphabet when it comes to understanding big data and what we're seeing occur in the geospatial industry and how the geospatial industry impacts every single business enterprise across the planet. For those of us on the call, probably many are oriented around this, but for quite a few people, there's a revolution going on about how we exploit the where of a problem. And the perfect storm, of course, is when we start to really look at the amount of devices, smart or otherwise, that are changing, again, our work life, our play life, and every single business process we can imagine. Another point we'd like to make to our clients, and we're sharing this today, is the fact that we think mobility is more than apps. Obviously, in the last 3 to 4 years, there's been an explosion in app stores and building apps and delivering apps. The generation in high schools and middle schools, they've known nothing other than getting their information and their entertainment through apps on mobile phones. This is amazing. The guys we have at our office that are coding apps today are thinking and designing things in ways that are fundamentally different than my generation. This is amazing. Mobility being more than apps means that we're leveraging, finally, sophisticated GPS technology at a price point that makes sense. We're creating, again, a sea change in how we access information and where we access that information, so that at some point now it's becoming true that our information is going with us all the time. And this is very important for a variety of industries and businesses where access information anywhere, anytime, that promise is coming true. Obviously, when we talk about spatial functions and elements of location analytics, so much is being driven on where we are in relationship to other things. Where am I in relationship to you? Where am I in relationship to the store, to the bad guy, the good guy, the river, in my recreation opportunity, how far is my truck, et cetera, et cetera. With hyper-accurate GPS, and again, millions of devices becoming part of what is described as the Internet of Everything, mobility is making this all possible on multiple levels. And frankly, what we see, which is incredibly exciting and also very challenging regarding mobility, is the ability to produce, consume, and access data anywhere, again, anytime. That is fundamentally becoming easier. And as many of you have watched in the trends, and I think last week the Wall Street Journal reported on this again, the sales of mobile devices, smart or otherwise, is vastly outstripping the sale of your PC environment. There's a significant effort going on there that people need to understand. What are some of the things enabling mobility? What are the mobile enablers? Well, obviously, a number of vendors and main providers of software systems and services are doing a lot right now to expose their technology into business intelligence and generally location analysis in ways that heretofore was fairly difficult. For anybody that tried to do this 10, 15 years ago, we all know how hard this was. Today, a lot of that is exposed through APIs and services, and it's really up to the imagination and creativity of the provider, and the imagination, creativity, and need of the entity looking for the solution. Obviously, I've talked about the fact that GPS is becoming incredibly commercialized, commoditized. That's interesting to watch, as well as the fact that devices are not only taking advantage of GPS constellation for location, but as many of you know, we're doing positioning through cell phone towers, and we're doing positioning through Wi-Fi matrices. Power is becoming better. The number one limiting factor for mobility in many ways is the batteries, or battery technology, and the amount of power that chips and mobile chips are consuming. That's getting better, although it's not completely solved. Memory, cheaper. And then ultimately, imagine how connected we are today and how important it is that I can share with you what I have when I get it. The level of connectivity, or again, connectedness, as part of a function of the Internet of Everything that Cisco and many other people are talking about. And I wrote an article for Big Data Magazine a couple weeks ago. Pay attention to the increasing levels of kinetic connectivity. So when we talk about building a mobile app, and that we think is going to transform business processes for our clients or your organizations, these are, in many ways commonsensical, but we wanted to share these with people before we get into the demos, so they understand some of the things that we think about with our clients when they come to us with a problem or an opportunity. Clearly, architecture matters in mobility. We're looking at target devices. We're looking at having a much more heterogeneous environment than we have had in some degree, in some ways, building for the desktop, building for the workstation, building for the closed network. So device matters. Operating systems matter. iOS, Android, Windows Phone, to name the three dominant. Understanding how to build and develop the pros and cons, ins and outs matters. Finally, or not finally, but the question is, what is it that we're trying to achieve? Is this entertainment? Is this a business process? Is this a function? Is this a job site? Are we attempting to, what are we building towards, which is very, very key. functional requirements and definition, I think, are as important, if not more so, in terms of understanding an application that's going to exploit mobility than we've ever seen. It takes really a lot of attention to what types of analyses are we attempting to achieve, and how are we going to do that with the right combination of device, server, and services technology. And then again, as I mentioned, what we spend an inordinate amount of time now with our clients, and you'll see some examples of this today. We got permission from our clients to show some things and show some things we're developing by stripping off client names, and we're very thankful they let us do it. Understanding how we're going to manage very limited real estate in a dynamic real estate where, you know, generations of people now, all they know is how to access information. The user experience and the design goals are very, very important in terms of incredible intuitiveness. It's even more challenging now with limited real estate and screen real estate to hit that sweet spot. And with those comments and some introductory statements about mobility, its relationship to big data, the 3 and 4 B's of big data, and then again, really the notion of accessibility and agility when it comes to building apps as well as accessing information, so that we essentially are maximizing our business processes and optimizing our processes. These are the kind of things that we worry about GCS, and some of the things we wanted to share with the attendees today. Kevin, with that, I guess I'll turn it back to you to look at poll number 2.
Okay, great, Alex. Thanks. That was a terrific overview of geospatial, big data, and mobility. And so there's number 2. It's already up on screen for you, and I'm going to launch it here in just a second. It says, if your organization plans to develop a mobile app, which platforms will you target? And you see we have, well, 3 choices really, and a 4th for all the above. The first one is iOS, 2nd is Android, 3rd, Windows Phone. And I think probably most of us are familiar with each of those. Those of us who have smartphones probably have a phone that works on one of those 3. And you can choose all the above if you'd like. So if your organization does plan to develop a mobile app, which platforms will you target? We'll give you a few more seconds to vote here. And I can already tell these are kind of interesting results coming up. I want to give just a few more seconds, maybe 7 more seconds before I close it out. About 3/4 of you have voted so far. And alrighty, I'm going to close that, and I'm going to share the results. And Alex, I don't know if you can see the results, but it's kind of interesting. We've got 41% say iOS, 46% say Android, only 5% saying Windows Phone, and 38% saying all of the above. Alex, anything in those results surprise you at all?
Actually, not really.
Okay.
That would be something I think it would be good for us and our attendees to talk about a little bit maybe during the Q&A. I think that's consistent with what we're seeing in the market.
Okay.
I could pontificate all day long about what that means to the businesses, and so could our attendees, but
right.
Not surprising. And what I am interested in, though, is the realization there by those that responded to the poll that it's pretty important to design apps depending on the business for all the above. People are demanding ubiquitous. They're demanding ubiquitous application platform, and that's challenging because a lot of houses are specializing in one or the other, and the tricks and trades back and forth are not the same, as we all know, depending on these development environments and these SDKs. So interesting results. That's really cool data.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Alex, to keep moving.
All right, very cool. Thanks, Kevin. So our goal in this webinar was to create some things that were interactive. We thought the polls might be helpful and get, stimulate some thinking here. We've got a pretty good group of attendees, which is a record for us right now, which is exciting. So it's my pleasure to introduce the presenter of some of the apps that we're building or have built or are in the process of building right now. Again, some of these have been sanitized. Some of these are prototypical. Some of these are robust. But I'd like to introduce Brian Collins, who joined GCS about a half a year ago as a senior systems integrator. Brian has a really interesting background that brought a lot of uniqueness to our company in terms of working on complex systems, systems integration, the IP6 protocols, building automation, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're finding, and what Brian's been working on, is helping our clients and our staff build mobile apps that are designed to help manage buildings and automated control systems and manage video systems and manage your temperature systems and just a whole range of things. So if I'm 5,000 miles away, of course, and I want to manage my 20,000 square foot facility and I want to know all the diagnostics, how do we put that together, and what does that mean? And what does it mean when it comes to location component of mobility? So we thought Brian would be the perfect person to walk people through some of these. And Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you to take people through the Montana Parcel app, our Geofence app, and our augmented reality app.
Great. Thanks very much, Alex. My pleasure to be here. Thanks again to you and Kevin today, and to all the attendees for being here. Pretty exciting webinar for us today. As Alex mentioned, I'm going to tell a story, in effect, 3 examples of some mobile apps that we both have in the production level available for the public, and also in-house development right now, or specific to clients who have allowed us to use those apps in demonstration mode today. So Alex, if we could move on to the next slide. Okay, so the first slide that we're going to demo today is the Montana Parcel app. And this app was developed for the Android platform. In its creation, it was the first of its kind in terms of integrating ArcGIS server technologies with onboard GPS sensor technology, and then supplemental enterprise-level database web services to consume information that applies to land in the state of Montana from a number of sources. Again, developed for the Android platform with the Android SDK, also utilizing .NET and ArcGIS server technologies. And one more time, this particular app is available for free download in the Google Play Store. Okay, Alex, let's advance to the demo video. Whoops, we'll have to back up one slide, and there we go. So what we have here is some video that was collected in real time, splash screen for the Montana Parcel app. When the application opens, you are first prompted, if it detects GPS signal, of whether or not you'd like to move to your specific location. I'm selecting no at the beginning of this example. Because GCS is in Missoula, I thought it might be appropriate for us first to focus in on the University of Montana. In the center of my screen there, you can see the oval in the middle of the campus. What I'm going to do is double tap my finger on that oval to acquire some information about this area. There you go. You see real-time query hitting some web services, database web services, and it's returned some general information to us. Most notable here is that the market value for this parcel is showing as $0, which seems strange to me offhand. So I'm going to go ahead and close that general information window. And at the top of our screen, in the middle, we have a button as I center back on the parcel, and the parcel stays highlighted, a more comprehensive results tab. Now, the data that you're seeing in this results tab, again, is being queried in real time from the Montana Department of Revenue databases, and also complemented by some in-house database services here at GCS. Closing back out of that screen, not wanting to spend too much time to digest all that information, I'm going to move to another parcel. I've switched my base map view, incidentally, which is being called through the Google API, Google Base Map Services. And I'm going to zoom in on an area that I think to be commercial. Happens to be the Boone and Crockett Club just north of the GCS office here. So again, I'm going to double tap the screen after I've swiped over to this location. Double tap, parcels highlighted. Okay, here I see some good information. So this does happen to be a parcel that does have a realistic value associated with it. And I also want to mention, too, that these data are being pulled from the State of Montana Department of Revenue in a fashion that is as up-to-date as the state makes that data publicly available. So it's not canned behind the scenes. It's not hard-coded into the app. It's actually being called online wherever you are, whenever you want it. And finally, what I'm going to do here, and to be honest with you, I find this to be one of the most fun and useful uses of this app, is to find out in real time about an area that I'm interested in visiting. In particular, I'm going south of Missoula here to an area that my family and I actually like to go huckleberry picking this time every year. And I've been having a debate with a friend of mine in terms of the area that we want to target this year. So again, I see the Google Maps base map, and I see one green polygon, which indicates normally that that's public land, Nature Conservancy, sure enough. Now my friend has been arguing or debating with me that there is public land in this area which is called Bear Run Creek Road. So now that I've oriented myself, I've turned satellite view back on again coming from Google. And I'm going to zoom into this area of interest. The debate is that past the first fork in the road, which is on the right-hand side there, you're able to pick and recreate or what have you anywhere you'd like. So what I'm doing here is just tapping around on the screen to find out some information about these property parcels. So far, as you can see in the results as they pop up, it looks like everything thus far is privately owned. It's not showing United States of America, Bureau of Land Management, Department of Natural Resources, or State of Montana. It's showing private land ownership by the owner name. So here, I'm about to conclude this portion of the demonstration, but you can see that I'm able to locate myself with the GPS sensor on board and find out information real time about exactly where I'm located, and in this case, prove my friend wrong that we probably should choose another location for our huckleberry trip. With that, I think I'll turn it back over to Alex for some quick commentary on value proposition of the Montana Parcel app.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brian. So the interesting part about that was the reason the state of Montana University campus didn't show any property value is it's state-owned, and they don't do market value appraisal on the state land. So that example is interesting. The double tap function allows you to pick the parcel, identify the parcel, and quickly grab a whole bunch of information. And we built this 4 years ago as an early example of what was possible. And the whole idea of knowing where you are, whose land you're on, what's its value, we've seen an interesting reaction to this. The first reaction, of course, was real estate agents and real estate community came to us and basically had a lot of different ideas. Also, law enforcement loved it because for the first time they could drive around and very easily, very quickly, again, accessing their information quickly, know where they were, and then hunters and others find this useful. And this has been the foundation of many of our development activities related to mobile development of apps, what we learned there and how we made it happen. Again, services upon services, trying to provide information to people in the field. Again, Montana-centric. We're now currently looking at expanding this nationally. We're talking to some other technology providers and vendors about that. And hopefully in the coming months you might see a national app of something to that effect. So Brian, I'm going to turn it back to you now to talk a little bit about geofencing.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex. Okay, so our second demo here today in our presentation is focused on what is commonly referred to as geofence technology or a geofence app. What I'm going to demonstrate here in the next video, on the next slide, is an app that utilizes the onboard GPS sensor technology again to reference what are virtual geofences or boundaries that exist around specific retail areas and then return real-time location-based content back to the user. Again, this was developed with the Android SDK, utilizing ArcGIS plugin, also utilizes ArcGIS online services, as well as some custom GCS map services in-house. So go ahead and advance, Alex, and let's walk through this video. Okay, so this app under development currently we refer to as Get It. Again, Get It is based around assigning virtual polygons to market areas that delineate whether an individual with a mobile device is in or out of that particular area. So as the app begins to load, and we are panning around interactively, zooming by swiping the screen, base map coming from ArcGIS Online Base Map Services. What we see here first in the upper left-hand side of your screen there is the building where the GCS office is located. Okay, and we've just located the GCS geofence highlighted in green and been given an indication with a bubble in the center of the screen that tells us which geofence we're currently located within. What we're going to do now is take a virtual field trip, if you will, break from the office and walk around the block to get some fresh air and pass in and out of a number of geofences in our neighborhood. So you can see the dot beginning to move, and you can also see the dot expanding and contracting, which indicates the actual GPS signal strength at any given time. Okay, so we passed Kent Brothers Automotive, and now we're into a bakery on the corner of our block, a favorite of many of the staff here at GCS. Great coffee and pastries. And what I did when the geofence indication for Le Petit opened up was I double tapped again on that green bubble to instantiate the web browser, so I can now begin learning about this location if I don't know anything about it, or perhaps they have some sales or a coupon or some such. So here I am real time during the recording of this session, just perusing that website. Okay, I've decided to continue on with my walk, go back around the corner. You can see I'm still inside the orange geofence of the bakery. Now passing into another favorite spot, the Kettle House Brewery, though we're not going to stop there, a little too early in the day probably for us to be having beers. We're going to continue on down the street. Now entering into the MasterTech Incorporated Toyota Auto Mechanic lot, walking at a brisk pace down the sidewalk, just about to cross out of that particular geofence and again into another one of our neighborhood favorites, what happens to be Big Dipper ice cream. Now again, I've been notified on the app that I've crossed into that geofence. Simply double tapped on the balloon to call up the website for this particular retailer. And again, I'm just scrolling through real time here, some content on the browser on my tablet that I was using for this demonstration. Interesting. Take a quick look at the menu, see if there's anything I want. Again, clicking on a link for a truck. I didn't realize they had an ice cream truck, but that's good to know. Okay, we're done at the Big Dipper. We're going to continue on. As long as we're inside the geofence, the notification stays up. Now you can imagine too that not only is this beneficial for the end user of the device to know where they are and know what's available to them, but this information could also be going back to the retailer, letting them know who enters and exits their particular geofence. So I've come around the corner here, passed into another geofence for the Holiday gas station and convenience store, which happens to be right across the lot from our office. Again, commonly frequented by the staff members here, and I've checked to see if they have any good sales today. Though to be honest, nothing looks too great to me. I usually go for Coke and Doritos. I'm going to exit out of that website now and should probably finish my walk and get back to the office so we can be hard at work developing more mobile apps. You can see me getting to the end of the Holiday geofence. Here we are back at the GCS World Headquarters, and that is the end of this particular presentation. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Brian. So I'm just going to dwell here for a second on the image so everybody can continue to see it as that recording is done. We're excited about this app and obviously the customer that's having us build this. This is not a new idea, but the whole idea of walking through as a consumer and have retailers having a new way of reaching consumers by connecting this whole idea of a virtual retailing polygon is cool. The hard part about this was to get this very refined in terms of a very tight area. Now, some of those businesses and some of the businesses that our client is marketing to may want to extend their reach, 5 miles so that they can capture traffic coming down the freeway. Maybe, and so what you start seeing is this intersecting layers of 3D and 4D information where we're trying to not only visualize where you are in relationship to the retailer of interest, but we're trying to rapidly help the consumer connect directly to the buying opportunity. If Brian had stopped at every single one of those, you would realize that the goal here is for the Kettle House, for Le Petit Autre, for Holiday, for the mechanic to be finding new ways of communicating directly to that mobile consumer, that mobile retailer. And this is a good example of where location analytics is important, because when the the retailer wants to define their marketing polygon up and down the main street of America here, they have a lot more choices to them available, and it's our job to bring that all together. So we're really grateful that our client allowed us to show this. This is, you know, trying to hit the sweet spot in terms of multiple technologies coming together at one time. We can't reveal the name of the app. Get It is our prototype thing in-house that we were building for demonstration purposes. But geofencing, and we think, is an interesting concept, probably not new to many people on the phone, but to enable that in real time vis-a-vis a mobile device, and to link that up to ads and advertising and dynamic polygons for that sort of interlaced overlay of retail space, we think is exciting. Where that's going to go here very shortly is more direct consumer advertising. So it won't just be, hey, I've walked into a polygon and it happens to be Burgermaster or, you know, Cabela's. Cabela's and Burgermaster are going to know enough about you that they will send ads directly targeted specifically to the individual mobile user. Brian, I'm going to turn it back to you to talk a little bit about AR.
Great. Thanks, Alex. AR again, augmented reality. In this particular demonstration that's coming up next, we're going to be looking at some samples which are doing real-time analysis of video from an onboard camera source of the tablet that I was using for specific image recognition and location-based output. Now, again, in general concepts, somewhat similar to the geofencing, although the technology used here and the end-user experience is drastically different. Again, developed in the Android SDK and NDK using some C++ code and then OpenGL technology for the video feed. So, Alex, let's go ahead and roll the clip. Okay, so for our first demonstration here, what we're going to do is focus on safety. One of the things that we've had a client who's very interested in is virtualizing and visualizing subsurface components such as pipelines, gas lines, electrical conduit, and such, indicating utility. Now, commonly people will call before they dig, and the term that we've been discussing here is know now before you dig using virtual reality. So we actually detected that manhole and then popped up a notification there. Simple in concept, very difficult to accomplish that task, but also very exciting that it's happening in real time. So again, here with the field trip around the block theme, we're going to walk down the street here, again recording live video from the camera. This time now, we know we're not going to dig in the manhole, but we've decided we're hungry. Let's say that we're new to the Missoula area or not familiar with downtown, and we want to grab a quick bite for lunch. We cross the street here, and we encounter a restaurant. Assuming we don't know anything about this restaurant, or even if we do, we point the camera display at the logo, and again, a very complex, comprehensive image detection on the video is able to detect that logo and then provide us with some information. In this case, what it's doing is as I've frozen the frame here, is popping up the menu for this location with some links to some social media and such. But imagine being able to just have an image detect on a logo, select what you want on the menu, order it before you go in, expedite the entire experience. It's really going to revolutionize how we interact with this sort of technology. And then finally, we've crossed the street over to the bridge above the Clark Fork River. Doing a quick pan around, we've had our lunch, we're full, feel like we might want to do something fun, something playful. So we've selected the playful option here that we embedded into the user interface, and we've pointed it again at Mount Sentinel, which is just to the east of the University of Montana, a very popular destination for hiking in town. This time of year, though, people are constantly worried about fire danger and fire risk, and what we've done here is overlaid real-time on the video by recognizing the M on the mountain, a green and red area indicating okay to hike or not okay to hike based on fire risk danger right now. So again, really, really changing in our minds the paradigm that people function with in terms of interacting with their mobile devices. Very exciting to me. Particularly the restaurant comes to mind in that when I'm in an urban area that I'm not familiar with, using mobile apps, I'm typically 6 to 8 or 10 steps into clicking through to try to find content, whereas if I had an application that could recognize logos and simply pop it up on the screen, I virtually only had to start the application. That's pretty amazing. Back to you, Alex, for comments.
Yeah, so for those of you that have heard about augmented reality, we've all seen the 50-yard line on the football. We've watched NASCAR. If anybody's tracking the America's Cup, you're seeing some pretty amazing information being displayed on the Earth's surface in new ways. We think this is neat. The client that's asked us to work on some of this, this example is really a combination of different applications that we're building in different ways. We brought it all together into one demo. So this isn't a seamless app that's trying to figure out how to do utility work and recreation work and consumer retail. But the point was to bring it all together into one demonstration. But as a geographer, one of the things I'm most excited about, especially when it comes to mobility, is to move beyond the Google Glass and basically empower everybody to have information augmenting our reality, our natural experience. This one I froze on here, the ability for me to look at a mountain and be able to know where it's okay to hike and where it's not okay to hike, I think is going to transform how we're experiencing geographic information. The one that Brian did very quickly at the very beginning about the manhole, that's not just call before you dig, that's see before you dig. And that's the notion of being able to look into environments and know whether you're safety or not. And obviously the applications for the utility industry are interesting, and it may or may not be a utility client that's asking us to build that. And then finally, if I own a restaurant and I want people to know what's on the menu and how I can order and how I can interact by getting my logo, my brand recognized in an augmented reality function, we think these are just really powerful things. So what you'll see coming out of GCS more and more, or perhaps from our clients to the extent that they will reveal it, is we will see significant investment in the next year in terms of augmented reality. We started doing this years ago with the first app that Brian showed you in terms of parcel capability, but we see this really becoming very powerful, and the goal now is to come up with select functions and select business processes, and it takes a very, very talented group of developers to build that, and I want to give a big shout out to Jackson, who worked with others to make that, to make some of those AR pieces. So with that being said, I'm going to move on here to poll number 3. And Brian, I really thank you for your time and your demonstration and all the work you put to put all that together with the members of the team. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Kevin.
Okay. Hey, Alex, thanks a lot. And Brian, those were fantastic demos. I think everybody learned a lot. But we're not done yet. We've got poll number 3 on screen now. And as you can see, I'm going to read that in just a second, but just a quick reminder to the audience. In about 4 minutes, we will be going to the live Q&A with Alex and Brian. So feel free to start sending your questions in now. Actually, we already have about 8 questions, so they are coming in. And here's poll number 3. If you're planning to develop a mobile app in the next 6 months, what industry will it serve? All right, and I can tell you right now, we've got real estate up there, consumer retail, law enforcement, utility, and other. And you can select all that apply. And the point is, we really struggled with this internally because we wanted to do a list. There were many, many other industries we could have listed there, but GoToWebinar only lets you put up 5 options. So that's why we had to choose those. So unfortunately, we're a little restricted, but looks like most of you are finding answers. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to vote here. This is pretty interesting. Actually, I would have to say I'm a little surprised at these results, and I'm going to see if Alex is too. I'm just going to keep it open for about another 3 or 4 seconds here. Go ahead. You can choose one or more there. All right. Let me go ahead. I'm going to close the voting on the poll, and then I'm going to share the results. And this is kind of interesting. So we had 12% go with real estate, 20% consumer retail, and also 20% law enforcement. 45% mentioned utility, and I think that's not a surprise, especially when we talk about the augmented reality. But 59% went with other. Alex, what do you think about that?
I think it speaks to the sky's wide open. I think this is very disruptive. It tells me that our audience or our attendees represent some pretty diverse industries and some pretty creative people. What we didn't talk about is some of the work we've done for the National Park Service and U.S. Forest Service with augmented reality, bringing battle sites to life, bringing historical downtowns to life. You know, it's really matching the right technology to the right industry. And I think, Kevin, this speaks to the fact that we couldn't capture all the categories either, but it represents diversity. Utility doesn't surprise me. Law enforcement's a no-brainer. I think there's apps that have been meeting real estate needs, but that's very interesting, and again, maybe some fodder for discussion here during Q&A.
Okay, terrific. All right, and let me hand it back to you, Alex.
Okay, so we have about 14 minutes left, and I want to make sure that I go through this summary fairly quickly. I think everybody can read. In summary, the reason we focus on mobility as part of the big data phenomena is because we do think it's taking organizations and businesses into the future. Fundamentally, and you could read the national pundits, if organizations, institutions, whatever, aren't figuring out how to develop a mobile strategy, I think they should be concerned. Number two, as geographers and people that practice GIS and sort of the hidden silent element of spatial analytics, I think this is a very, very exciting time to be in the industry as practitioners, as consumers, as business leaders, as whatever, because we're now bringing land information to people and people to land information, and I think that's exciting. If we had a full dedicated company, we would be focusing on the revolution that's occurring in retail right now, in retail services. And then ultimately, as I've already said, I've been harping on this for a long time, and I think it's gotten a lot of attention now nationally in the last year, but AR and effective AR, especially geo-AR, is going to be amazing. And we can't build stuff fast enough in that regard here at GCS. Again, major investments in that. Finally, what we used to know was we'd come to work, we'd plug in, we'd sit down, and we'd go to work and we'd do our jobs. That's changing. It's changing in a big way. The 9 to 5 is now 24/7. We all have to figure out how to limit ourselves and manage that. We have to pull ourselves into environments where we're expected to take our work everywhere. Some of that is spatially enabled, some of it isn't. How many people are trying to revolutionize how they get information, how they work with information, and how that relates to where you are is really interesting to me and all of us here at GCS. And again, I don't want to be completely limited around this, but it is changing the way we are buying things. It's changing the way we are seeing things, ultimately changing how we look at content by providing a geographic context. Humans are really, really good at understanding things based on context. That's cognitive theory 101. But what I think is happening now is we get outside the office and we get outside the home, and it revolutionizes our video games and our information and our workflow and our security and our safety, even our homeland, is essentially it's empowering. So mobility out of analytics and out of cloud, being mobile is a function of being free, and I think freeing ourselves from standard ways of doing things is going to create a lot of creativity, will spur a lot of imagination, which I think is reflected in the amount of revolution occurring right now in this particular subspace or space. So those are just some general summary comments that I wanted to offer to the audience, which may or may not help spur some comments and questions that we want to get into here very quickly. So back to you, Kevin.
All right, great. Well, it's time that many of you, I'm sure, have been waiting for. We're going to have the drawing for the Google Nexus 7 tablet. And this is a location-enabled tablet, 7-inch, 16 gigabyte, and I own one of these, and I really like mine. And so the winner, who is still online, is Helen Plattner. And Helen, we have your email address. We'll be getting in touch with you after the webinar, and we'll get your address to send the Google Nexus tablet along to you. So appreciate your being on, and appreciate everybody being on. But stay tuned. We've got the Q&A coming up next. Alex, if you want to advance the slide, and Brian, ask you to turn your microphone back on. We're going to get into the Q&A session. All right. We have a lot of questions have come in. Some of them are pretty specific, so people have been listening closely. Alex, let me give the first one to you. This is a pretty interesting one. Have you created any apps that process real-time social media inputs, such as from Twitter?
Yeah, we have. That happens to be a customer that I can't talk about at all on the call here, but suffice to say it was in the security space. The idea essentially was, the challenge we were given was to harvest social media feeds, do some sentiment analysis through some primitive, and I say primitive, natural language processing, and essentially attempt to map sentiment. Not a revolutionary idea, but to get it to work. So what we did is we were able to look at a lot of Twitter feeds. We were able to harvest the GPS-enabled Twitter feed. We were able to localize that. We were able to do some basic clustering of density of certain sentiment, and then link that to secondary and tertiary ways of getting information about individuals as part of that group. The idea essentially is crowd monitoring and crowd management, and trying to be proactive in essentially looking at things. And this may or may not be related to things like what's happening in Egypt or in other places, but the idea of rising crowd formation, how social media is used for effective communication, and then ultimately how to diffuse that by sending the right messages at the right time to different elements of that group, so that the left goes right and the right goes left. So yeah, we've done it. Now, beyond the security application, obviously, if I walk into a stadium and I'm tweeting, and I want to be tweeted to about that Coke sale, well, you take the geofence, you take augmented reality, you take a mobile device, you bring all that together, and the sky's the limit right now in terms of localizing. And one of the reasons we were so specific in our geofencing demo, to the extent that we had to build that demo for this webinar, is we wanted people to understand this group. We wanted them to see that we could get very, very specific in the spatial resolution of walking from one place to the next. Now, I don't care if you're getting your position accuracy from GPS or Wi-Fi networks. If you're in a stadium of 80,000 people and you're an advertiser and you want to capture sentiment and mood, and you want to advertise to them about your product, you have to be very, very discriminate geospatially in where someone is and what you're saying to them, all in real time. So, Kevin, long-winded answer to whoever asked that question. Very interesting question. I'd love to follow up with that person at another time. Thanks.
Great. Okay. And actually, Brian, the next one's going to go to you. It's kind of interesting. This person must have been reading our minds, Brian, because you and I were talking about something beforehand. And the question is, can you control or adjust the size of the geofence? And then what somebody else wanted to know is, what if you end up with overlapping geofences from two different competing companies, maybe across the street from each other or something like that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's, is a technical question in some ways. You certainly have the ability to adjust the geometry that defines the geofence. Now, what you use to make that decision then becomes a discussion, in our case, between us and our clients in terms of the granularity that they want and how big they want those buffers to be. And I find it interesting, too, with the shift in this mobile technology, and again, the paradigm that I've said that so often we've been focused on the mobile app being very user-centric, and I think very infrequently we think about the fact that the data that we are visualizing could also be returned, for example, again to a retailer. So in terms of overlapping geofence polygons, I don't think that there's any reason why that data could not be disseminated to both those competing businesses. From my own personal experience, I tend to gravitate towards app design, user interface that is simple, easy to use, fun, keeps me engaged, and I like to have the ability to choose where I want my notifications, or say, if we walk into an area where we have you know, a Starbucks coffee shop and a local coffee shop. You know, I like to have the ability to you know, choose what is going to be displayed on my screen, being fine with both of them, knowing that I was there within their geofence area. So, yeah,
Okay.
that's a good question. Challenging in terms of making that decision. A lot of ways to go about it.
Absolutely. All right. And let me, a couple of people in the audience made reference to Esri products that might do something similar, and I'm just not familiar enough with them. But I mean, the long and the short of it is, you know, why build something like this, like these apps from scratch, as opposed to are there just commercial products that can be bought?
Well, I'll take that. So we have clients, and they come to us because they want us to build them something that they own. So that's business 101. Yeah, Esri builds all sorts of stuff. If you noticed in the presentation, a great deal of these applications are not monocentric or single-focused. These really represent a blend of COTS that we choose to use, usually a combination of Microsoft, Esri, increasingly some IBM technologies we're excited about, and then our own secret sauce. These are usually work-for-hire applications. We build them, deliver them, and then our clients have them, and then they can go off and move forward. Our clients have the opportunity, of course, to go to Esri and buy from Esri, too. I think it comes down to design goals, and as you heard at the beginning, we at GCS, we're not a widget company. We don't build software like Esri and sell software and now increasingly cloud services. We sell solutions. So our clients come to us when they want a custom solution, which in this case may or may not involve Esri technology. But our point in here wasn't to say that our apps are the end-all, be-all apps. Our point in this mobility webinar was to let people know about, A, what's going on, share some of our opinions, give some examples and demonstrations for those, and then stimulate conversation around what does mobility mean vis-a-vis location analytics. But good question, you know, and again, the market's wide open right now in terms of price, functionality, and performance when it comes to what does mobility do for my business today, from the simple business operation, obviously, all the way up to the enterprise. Good question.
Okay. Yep, great. And here's a real specific one. This one I'm pretty sure refers back to the Montana Parcel app. It says, what was the red boundary around the university oval, and is the parcel boundary being retrieved in real time? Brian, you want to handle that?
So they answered their own question. It is a parcel boundary, and it is being retrieved in real time.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
That is correct over a geodata map service. Correct.
Okay, got it. All right.
But we didn't make that explicit, that when you're in Montana and you want to know where you are, you double tap, and we tell you, we delineate the parcel, we show you the outline. Instead of filling the outline in like we did with geofencing, we keep it there, and you now can explore and you know, start to get all that information. Now that was basically focused around parcel, tax appraisal, et cetera, mass appraisal. But you take those fundamental building blocks and you add a couple more layers. Am I in the right hunting area? Am I in the right fishing area? Am I in the right fire area? Am I in an area that's hot in terms of retail markets? You get the drift.
Sure, sure. Okay. And it looks like we have time for just one more question. And I'm not sure this can be answered definitively, but how much mobile data do some of these apps use in terms of mobile phone costs and data usage? Anybody?
Okay, great question. Yeah, let me answer that. Great question. We try to essentially be considerate of the fact that our applications will gravitate away from cell phone connectivity to Wi-Fi if it's available. So it's not good enough anymore to build something that's going to consume people's their costs on their phones. So we really try to take a Wi-Fi. If you're not in Wi-Fi, fine. Another major challenge we have is a lot of our clients, or some of our clients, I should say, need to be able to be disconnected. So it's the whole notion, you know, if you understand about the personal geodatabase or wherever, where everything enough needs to be there so that if I am not communicating through satellite backhaul or cell or Wi-Fi or some other common communications protocol, I can still be functional. I can still do my work. What if I'm out in the middle of, literally Montana and I'm not, wired? So it's a balancing act between what you store locally, how you package that, how to make that application light, and then be able to be very, very heterogeneous in terms of how we get data so we limit the impact on people's data plans. Excellent question, and that really comes down to the design goals and requirements of our clients.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze one more question in because the question has come from Helen Plattner, the winner of the Google Nexus tablet. She says, is it possible to set the geofencing in two ways, one to frame the location for the consumer and another to frame the area that the retailer wants to send their marketing messages out within? That's an interesting question.
Absolutely. Great question. Good insight. By the way, congratulations on the Nexus. That's cool, and the answer to your question is good question, and the answer is yes. Okay, good deal. Well, that's it. We're out of time. We're actually about a minute over now. Alex, if you can go ahead and advance the slide. First, I want to thank our audience members for joining us today for the second Geospatial Big Data webinar. And just one more reminder that you're invited back on October 24th when our third webinar in the series will feature location analytics. And in just a minute after we finish the webinar, you'll be receiving a brief survey from us. Please take about 90 seconds to fill it out and let us know what you thought of today's webinar. And if you have any other questions about geospatial big data, please visit the website at www.yourdatasmarter.com. And thanks for joining us today. Thank you.
The organ